Hey, 2 coffees. Even someone with a low education can make coffee, right? Sebastian laughed as he looked at me. Today was the day Sebastian, an elite who graduated from a prestigious university and worked at a big company, brought his fiancée over. Yet, he deliberately ordered me to make coffee, treating me as if I were just the housekeeper. The man who would be my brother-in-law mocked me playfully, while his fiancée said nothing. No, it was more like she couldn't say anything because she didn't understand English. Sitting next to Sebastian, his fiancée, a beautiful Asian woman with black hair and black eyes, waited for his translation. I gave her a kind smile. I'm Karen. Currently, I'm a 28-year-old part-time housewife. I graduated from a local public high school and immediately got a job as an office worker at a construction company, where I worked for nearly 10 years. I met Ash there, who is 2 years my senior, and married him. He's often mistaken for being intimidating due to his large build, but he's actually a very gentle person. Working in a place dominated by men, I was one of the few female employees and sometimes faced cold attitudes from superiors. The company's president embodied old-fashioned thinking, which influenced the company culture. I managed to continue working until I got married, supported by Ash, who was my direct supervisor. Saved by his kind nature in both work and personal life, I gradually became attracted to him and confessed my feelings, leading to our relationship. Both of us being reserved, we nurtured our love smoothly without major conflicts. I was enveloped in happiness, thinking I could marry Ash after the family meeting, but then an incident occurred. Ash's family consists of his mother, Bridget, and his older brother, Sebastian, who is 2 years his senior. Ash's father passed away when he was still in elementary school. Bridget works from morning till night every day to raise her growing sons. The first time I met her, the number of wrinkles uncharacteristic for her age spoke of her hardships. When I decided to marry Ash, he asked me to live with Bridget at her house. Having met Bridget several times before, I happily agreed. Bridget, saying she always wanted a daughter, treated me very affectionately. On the day of the family meeting, as soon as I arrived, Bridget took the lead in hospitality, showing her wonderful attention to detail. Ash is a bit shy, so I was worried, but seeing him bring home such a wonderful girl, you never know how life will turn out, Bridget said. Ash, telling her to stop, blushed a little. It seemed they had a good parent-child relationship, so I wasn't worried about living with Bridget. However, the problem was Sebastian, the other person I'd be living with. He looked like Ash, but his personality was the complete opposite. When I introduced myself as Ash's fiancé, Sebastian unabashedly looked me up and down without any restraint. I was already feeling uncomfortable at this point, but what Sebastian said next was shocking. Typical of a low-educated woman, looking so plain. Hearing this almost sexual harassment-like comment from someone I just met, I felt humiliated and anger welled up inside me. Amused by my flushed face, Sebastian looked at me with a sleazy smile. Just as I braced myself for more comments, Ash and Bridget, who had gone to the kitchen, returned with coffee and cookies. Ash sat next to me with Bridget and Sebastian facing us across the table. While Bridget and I were talking, Sebastian kept interrupting. Karen, you went to that high school. Hate to say it, but isn't it the one with the lowest college progression rate around here? Why'd you go there? Didn't think about your future? In this day and age, women without an education aren't in much demand. But it's good Ash doesn't seem to mind. I passed though. Talking to a dummy might make me dumb too. My lack of higher education was more because I wanted to get a job early to ease the burden on my parents in disliking studies. Fortunately, the school I attended was a business academy, so I was blessed with qualifications and employment opportunities. This allowed me to choose my current company from a wider range of options than most high school graduates. I was working hard to save money for my much younger brother while also sending money to my parents. Ever since he was little, my brother had wanted to be a school teacher, which required going to university. Moreover, Ash had been by my side for years, seeing who I am inside. Even if I had been less educated or even a school dropout, he would not have treated me differently. Still, why does Sebastian insist on taking his high education and looking down on me? I heard Sebastian works for a major company with overseas dealings. Bridget, who raised them by herself, said he studied hard, achieved excellent grades, earned a scholarship, and went to university. Since graduating from a state university in Los Angeles and joining his current company, he's been sending a significant amount of money home every month for 10 years. When I later talked to Ash about this, I thought it was impressive, but I couldn't forget Sebastian's snide attitude. I guess he became bitter because he dedicated his bright youth entirely to studying. Thinking this way made me feel a little bit better. Sebastian, knowing I couldn't respond as Ash's wife, gradually started to act more arrogantly. Karen, if you're just going to sit there, maybe you could clean up the entrance. You know mom's back is bad, right? The sweets you always buy are too sugary. You're not young anymore. You should choose something more age-appropriate. Instead of me, Bridget would step in to stop him, but Sebastian wouldn't always listen to her words. In fact, he would lecture Bridget, saying it's not good to spoil me. It's true that Bridget's back isn't in good shape, and I hadn't given much thought to the selection of sweets. When I agreed with Sebastian's points, Bridget always apologized later. I'm sorry, my dear. He just can't speak gently, but he praises you when you're not around. He's just not honest, so forgive him. But if something really bothers you, please tell me right away. I see. He praises me in front of Bridget, probably to indirectly keep her from intervening. With his pride in his education, he seems quick-witted in such matters. Since then, I've been relentlessly put to work by Sebastian, almost like a housekeeper. Sebastian treats me like a housekeeper only when we're alone and limits his nagging when Bridget and others are around. When he occasionally does it, Bridget or Ash would defend me, so I didn't worry too much. But every time Sebastian saw me, he would say, Karen, why don't you take the initiative in doing housework? And urge me to take over Bridget's chores. I can still move around, so Karen, please relax. We're not living together just so you can do housework. Relax and enjoy your time here with Bridget and Ash. Saying this, Sebastian was quiet when they were around. But perhaps as revenge, when the two went out for shopping or errands, Sebastian started dumping even his own room cleaning on me. Anger welled up in me, wondering why I had to do this just because Sebastian said so. But I didn't want to spoil my good relationship with Bridget because of him, so I decided to endure a little. Sebastian, as if venting his daily frustrations, would berate me as a failed housekeeper and take his stress out on me. I too grew tired of dealing with Sebastian properly, so I just brushed him off and continued to ignore him. One day, Sebastian told me he wanted to introduce his fiancée to us. Honestly, I couldn't care less, but I thought this might stop the harassment towards me, so I felt a bit relieved. Generally, I'm busy with work and house chores on weekdays, so when Sebastian told Ash and me to take time off for this, it felt ominous. My hunch was right, and Sebastian proudly introduced us to his fiancée. She was an astonishingly beautiful Asian woman, like someone straight out of a magazine. Her name was Mina, 3 years younger than me, but she seemed very mature and composed. She met Sebastian through work, apparently. It turns out his claim of working at a major corporation wasn't just for show. At such a renowned company, it's not unusual to have beautiful women like her. What surprised me was that Sebastian could speak a decent amount of Chinese. I was amazed that he, barely able to handle English with people, had the words to charm an Asian beauty. Mina was polite and kind. She could speak simple English, so I enjoyed talking with her. Then Sebastian interrupted again. Mina, this is my brother's wife. I often take care of her, but we're not getting along right now. She's become bitter because she believes her education is inferior to mine. Can you handle her maturely? But I doubt you'll have to deal with her as much in the future, Sebastian said. Bridget and Ash looked surprised, but I barely managed to catch his insults. Sebastian's childishness, indirectly telling Mina that I wasn't worth associating with, made me angry. However, I didn't want to upset Mina by responding poorly, so I stayed quiet. Then, taking advantage of Mina's incomplete English comprehension, he said, Karen, try greeting in Chinese. You're my sister-in-law after all. Show us something good despite your low education. Ash and Bridget were angered by this and told him to retract his statement. Seeing this as a challenge from Sebastian, I stopped Ash and the others. Ignoring Sebastian's mocking look, I began speaking to Mina in Chinese. Mina, surprised by my Chinese, responded with a happy expression. Sebastian was taken aback by her reaction, looking pathetic and speechless. However, as Mina listened to me, her expression grew stern, and she started glaring at Sebastian, who panicked. What are you saying? Are you talking bad about me? No, Not at all. I was just sharing what I know about you, Sebastian. Even after our conversation ended, Mina kept glaring at Sebastian. When he tried to calm her down with a hand gesture, she forcefully brushed it off. She seemed really angry. Hey Karen, you can speak Chinese? Ash asked, looking surprised. I explained that I had once worked part-time as a guide for foreign tourists when I had just started my job. The income was low, so I secretly took on this work through a friend's introduction to help with living expenses. The company implemented a no side jobs policy right after the tourist season ended, so it's understandable that Ash didn't know. Who would have thought that experience would come in handy here? Hey, the words you used, they weren't proper, were they? Sebastian suddenly blurted out something nonsensical, so I reluctantly decided to respond. Why do you think they were improper? Because you're using non-existent words. Don't confuse Mina with your nonsense. Sebastian, if Mina was confused, our conversation wouldn't have been successful. I chose words that she would commonly use, and it seemed to work. Sebastian probably referred to the slang or abbreviated terms as non-existent. The Chinese he usually uses is a more rigid version used in the business world, not common in everyday conversation. It must have been unfamiliar to him, but to say they don't exist. Could it be Sebastian had always been speaking to Mina in a businesslike tone? When I looked at Mina, thinking this, she just smiled awkwardly and shrugged. However, her expression quickly turned to anger, and she started glaring at Sebastian. Sebastian, perhaps feeling the pressure, clicked his tongue at me, his face turning red. He crossed his arms in a clearly angered manner, looking down on me. What did you tell Mina anyway? Oh, I just told her that you have a main girlfriend besides her and she's being used as a mistress. What? Sebastian's face turned pale as he started to panic. I accidentally found proof of Sebastian's affair when I was ordered to clean his room. While organizing his messy self-help books and work files on the bookshelf, I found an album that seemed handmade by a woman, with pictures of the two together. Although I hated Sebastian, I thought it wasn't right to pry into someone's private life. But since he ordered me to clean his room, it was inevitable. More importantly, the album's cover prominently displayed a photo of the two kissing on what seemed like a Ferris wheel, suggesting he had no intention of hiding it. The woman in the photo definitely didn't have black hair like Mina and was likely American. From the numerous similar albums that strongly expressed self-importance, it was clear that Sebastian's relationship with his girlfriend had been a long one. Despite having a close girlfriend, it was a mystery why Sebastian chose someone as wonderful as Mina for an affair. He probably wanted to be admired for having an Asian beauty as his fiancée. He would have been exposed if it were only in front of Bridget and Ash. But it was a mistake to even summon me, whom he despised. Thanks to my detailed explanation of Sebastian's rotten character, including that he already had a girlfriend, Mina realized she was likely just a decorative fiancé and that Sebastian was a sinister person who bullied his sister-in-law in secret. Mina stood up and furiously confronted Sebastian. Her intimidating presence frightened him. But it seemed he didn't quite understand her fluent Chinese. Panicked by the exposure of his affair, Sebastian pathetically clung to Mina, but she brushed off his hand and left. After Mina left, Sebastian grabbed me by the collar. "How dare you? Did you enjoy your little revenge?" he shouted. Ash and the others wouldn't stand by silently, and Sebastian was quickly restrained. "No matter what high status you think you have, you've gone too far in belittling women. You're no longer my son, even if you're family, and insulting Karen in front of others is insane. Despite everything said, you've treated Karen like a housekeeper in secret." "I'll never forgive this," Bridget shouted, usually calm, even starting to cry. Sebastian, seemingly hurt by these words, slumped his shoulders. He was then led away by Bridget and Ash and eventually kicked out of the house. After the storm had passed and the house quieted down, Bridget apologized to me. Seeing her sad expression, I couldn't say anything more. Then Bridget sighed deeply and said, "Let's stop living together for a while. This is the parents' house, and we don't know when Sebastian might come back. After this incident, he might hold a grudge against Karen, which is dangerous." She then covered her face with both hands. As Bridget predicted, Sebastian started to ambush me, shouting and trying to force his way into the house. Consulting the police didn't help much. They said it was natural for a family member who was suddenly kicked out to try to return. Ash and I had to quickly look for a new place and hurriedly packed up and left the house. Months later, when our life started to settle down, I received a call from Bridget. It was about Sebastian's behavior after that incident. Since Ash and I moved out in an escape-like manner, Sebastian, who stopped visiting Bridget's house, apparently fell into serious trouble. It turns out Mayna was the daughter of the president of a major client of the company where Sebastian worked. Learning that his daughter had been two-timed by an ordinary employee, the president was furious and cut off all business with Sebastian's company. Sebastian was demoted to a regular employee as a result, and the news of his affair spread within the company, leading to his main girlfriend breaking up with him. Exposed to curious and somewhat sympathetic glances and now being ordered around by former subordinates, Sebastian, with his prideful nature, couldn't bear it and resigned soon after. Leveraging his modest Chinese skills, he found a new job but again faced conflict taking orders from employees nearly a decade younger, leading to his dismissal from there too. In just a few months, he repeated resignations and job changes for such reasons, and his arrogant attitude didn't help. Even at the job center, he insulted the staff with terrible words, making himself unwelcome. Eventually, struggling financially, Sebastian asked Bridget if he could return home, but she firmly refused. "I drove him away with a stick," Bridget exclaimed over the phone, making me laugh. For a while, he waited outside Bridget's house but soon disappeared. Apparently, he exaggerated his education and career to appeal to women with financial stability and moved in with them, leading a parasitic lifestyle. Increasingly showing no intention to work, he lived off these women, often causing trouble by cheating when they were not around. Why someone as unattractive and terrible as Sebastian attracted women is a mystery, but he might appeal to a certain type. Ash, appalled by this episode, has apparently not been in contact with Sebastian. Pretending not to know might be for the best. On the other hand, thankfully, Minna took a liking to me and we became friends. Due to work and home commitments, she's seldom in America, but we often have remote calls. Minna appreciated my Chinese language skills and said it's a waste for someone as conversational as you not to use it. She introduced me to interpreter jobs through her connections. I needed to restudy and relearn business Chinese, but as I always liked the language, it wasn't a burden. Now I'm enjoying my work, utilizing my strengths more than in my part-time job, and living fulfilling days. In an unexpected way, Sebastian indirectly carved a new path in my life, so maybe in a way, I should be thankful to him. Hello, my name is Bianca, and I'm 30 years old. The past year has been nothing short of a nightmare, and I'm still recovering from everything. I've been lurking here and reading so many stories, so I thought I'd give it a go and share mine. My story begins with my ex-husband, Shane. I met Shane right after I graduated from college. I had just secured a pretty good position at a well-known company, and Shane and I worked in the same department. He was assigned to be my mentor. The more time we spent together, the closer we got, and I found myself developing strong feelings for him. It turned out he felt the same way about me. I was concerned about company policies and wasn't sure if we would be allowed to be together. But our company was fine with it as long as we didn't let our relationship interfere with work and maintained a professional demeanor. We were happy to comply, and we started dating. Shane was an amazing and charming man throughout our relationship. We dated for about a year and a half before deciding to move in together. I own my own house, thanks to my parents' help, so Shane moved in with me and things were going great. After about 3.5 years of dating, Shane proposed to me and I was thrilled to say yes. The thought of spending the rest of my life with him brought me a lot of joy. We got married in a small, intimate ceremony 6 months after he proposed. Aside from our relationship, my career was soaring. I was bringing in a lot of new clients, which resulted in bonuses and raises. However, I slowly began to notice that Shane was behaving oddly towards me. Whenever I tried to talk to him about it, he brushed me off. After observing him more, I realized he was just jealous that I was earning more money and was more successful than him. I was hurt and upset that Shane viewed me as competition, but I figured he couldn't help how he felt, so I decided to try and help him at work. I gave him some pointers and even helped him secure new clients. He didn't take it well and lashed out at me, accusing me of demeaning him by implying he didn't know how to do his job. So I backed off and let him handle his work. This all happened about a year into our marriage. After Shane lashed out at me, I spent the next few months pouring myself into my work. our boss announced a promotion opportunity for anyone who brought in the highest number of clients. I wanted that promotion to make life easier for Shane and me. One day, after my shift, my boss called me into his office and told me I was getting the promotion. I was overjoyed and rushed home to tell Shane. Shane had the day off, so he had no idea what had happened. When I got home, I was greeted with a lovely meal. "How was work today, sweetie?" he asked. "I used my free time to make a nice dinner." "That's really sweet," I replied. "I have some great news to celebrate, so I bought us some good wine." "Wow, that's an expensive bottle. What's the big news?" "Today, just before work ended, I was called into the boss's office and told I was getting the promotion. The big promotion everyone's been wanting. Yeah, apparently I outperformed everyone." "We're going to be rolling in money," Shane said. "Seriously, how did you outperform everyone?" "Well, I guess I just worked as hard as I could. You saw how much effort I put in these last few months. I was constantly exhausted for a reason, and I guess it just paid off." "Hold on, are you jealous of me?" No, I'm just a little bummed that I didn't get promoted." "But does it really matter which of us gets promoted? We're both benefiting from it. My money is yours after all." "Sure, but it's not the same." "You cannot seriously be upset at me. I just wanted us to celebrate this big accomplishment. Can we please focus on that?" "You're right," Shane said. "Why don't we have an even bigger celebration than this, huh?" "What do you mean? How about I throw you a huge party for your promotion? We'll invite all our families, colleagues, and bosses." "Are you sure? That sounds wonderful, but wouldn't that be like rubbing salt in your wound?" I asked. "Nah, I'll be fine. Look at you worrying about me instead of celebrating. Besides, I think I have an idea for a great present to give you." "Oh, what is it?" "I shall give it to you in front of everyone at the party. But for now, how about we have ourselves a nice dinner?" I will admit that I was a little upset when Shane let his emotions get in the way of showing his appreciation for me, but he really turned himself around when he decided to celebrate with me. Over the next few weeks, Shane poured himself into planning a party for my promotion. It might be bad to say, but I was surprised that Shane wasn't behaving jealously. I was just grateful that he was appreciating me for once. Shane spent a lot of time outside the house while planning my party. He told me he couldn't contain his excitement and wanted it to be a surprise, so he had been going over to his mother's place to talk about it. Now, Shane's mother, Wendy, and I had a pretty cordial relationship. We weren't super close, but she was a nice lady. On the day of the party, Shane told me he was running a little late because he mistimed his surprise. But he sent me to the venue and had Wendy meet me there. I was genuinely floored when I entered the venue. It was a pretty big hall, beautifully decorated. When I walked in, everyone clapped for me, and I was congratulated by a lot of people. As I was talking to one of my colleagues, Wendy bumped into me and accidentally spilled her wine on me. "I'm so sorry I spilled on your dress. I'm so clumsy on my feet, and I've been nervous about coming here for so long. I guess it made me spill on you." "It's all okay. Don't worry. I'll just have my assistant get me an extra dress." "Wait, why don't you come to the side and let me see if I can do something?" "No, I don't think anything will help. Please, I feel really bad for what I did. At least let me try." "Okay, fine." Wendy pulled me aside, her expression serious. "I needed to tell you something important." "What do you mean?" "I need you to tell your security guards to prohibit my son's entry at all costs." "What? Why?" "Shane has been upset that you've been getting so successful. He's been ranting to me about it for so long. Surely you noticed that he was constantly over at my place." I knew he was upset, but I didn't think it was because he was jealous. With every day that passed, his anger only grew. When you told him you were getting a promotion, he lost his mind. But why would he arrange this promotion party in the first place? Because he's planning to embarrass you in front of your boss and colleagues. How? He plans on bringing in some false documents and showing them to everyone to prove that you didn't deserve your promotion. Why would he be that jealous of me? I have no idea. All I know is that he is one angry and jealous man. He will not stop at anything to get what he wants because he wants to be the one who's doing better. I tried my best to stop him today, but he refused to listen. "Okay, I need time to process all this." "I really get that, but you need to inform your security guards not to let him in at all." "Yeah, okay. Thank you for having my back." "Of course, sweetie." I couldn't believe what Wendy was telling me, but deep down I knew that what she was saying made sense. Even though my heart was telling me not to listen to Wendy, my instincts were telling me otherwise. So I informed the security guards not to let Shane in. While waiting for Shane to call me, likely to ask why he wasn't being allowed in, I decided to snoop around and see if I could gather any evidence. I approached the man in charge of the projector and told him that I was with Shane. I said Shane asked me to go through what was to be projected, and he let me see what was on the USB that Shane had given him. Wendy was right. There were hundreds of fake documents that, if shown to my bosses, would put me under investigation and lead to suspension. Not to mention, I could have lost my job. I was furious. I kept the USB and told the man to forget about projecting anything else on the screen. After a little more hunting and asking around, I managed to find all the people who would help him, like servers and those in charge of the audio. I had them all write down and sign statements saying they were hired by Shane to do something against me at my party. About an hour after Wendy warned me, Shane called. "Bianca, what the hell's going on here?" "What do you mean?" "I'm not being allowed in. Apparently, security guards got strict instructions from you to not let me in." "Yes. Why don't you head home and we can discuss things there?" "Why?" "I wanted to celebrate your big day with you. Look, I don't want to deal with you right now. I know what you've been up to, and I really don't care enough to talk about this over the phone." "Are you serious? Do you even know what you're doing?" "I definitely do. Go home, settle down your jealousy and insecurity. I knew something was wrong, and you refused to speak to me about it. I've had enough of you trying to steal my spotlight. You will pay for this later, but for now I just want to have fun." "What are you talking about? Why would I ever do something like that to you?" "I have heard about your plans, Shane. Who are you trusting more than me right now? Not to mention, I saw what you had planned on the USB you gave the person working the projector." "Wow, so you were snooping just to prove yourself right? Do you even have any trust in me?" "Of course I did. But after tonight, any semblance of trust I had in you has vanished. You can't blame me for it. It's not like you weren't rubbing my face in your accomplishments all the time." "I wasn't rubbing your face in anything. I was just sharing my accomplishments with you because you are my husband. I'm sorry I expected you to share in my joy instead of getting jealous. If I did the same thing to you, you would have behaved the same way. I would at least talk to you about it. I would never try to publicly humiliate you or ruin your career. You know what? I actually don't want to see your face for a while. I will see you in a few days. Bianca, you will come back home as soon as your party's done. Or so help me God. If you threaten me, I will never return. Bye." The very fact that Shane had the audacity to threaten me made me see red, but I calmed myself down and decided I was going to enjoy my party regardless of the fact that it was all a ruse to start my downfall. I had a blast, and at the end of the night, I went to Wendy's place. Of course, Shane contacted her, but she told him to stay away from her for a little while and asked him to give me some space. Over the next week, I filed for divorce and waited until I had the papers to go back home. Once I had them, I went back home and was greeted by Shane. "You're home finally. Don't try to act happy." "I'm not acting. I really missed you and I wanted to apologize for my behavior." "You think an apology is enough, Shane? You wanted to destroy my career and my reputation all because you were jealous and insecure." "I was just not in the right headspace." "That's not even a reasonable excuse. You have to understand, I was struggling a lot. You were being looked at for all the big projects and promotions, even though we were doing the same work. We may work in the same department, but there's a huge difference between our work. Are you saying that I'm not good at doing my job?" "You said it, not me. Maybe instead of targeting me, he should have thought about why I was getting looked at for everything. I didn't have to actually look at anything. You are a woman and you were just using your wiles to get whatever you wanted." "Wow. Do you even know how much revenue I brought in just in the last 3 months? I brought in triple what you did, and I did all my business over emails and calls. How do you suppose I worked my feminine wiles, huh? You must have done some sort of trickery. There's no way that you did so much in so little time. There's a reason I wanted to expose you. And you wanted to do that using fake documents? I couldn't find any actual records, so of course I had to fake some. There's no reason for you to be that much more successful than me. I had to take you down a peg. You really are a piece of work, you know that? You were willing to put down the woman you love all because you let your insecurities get the best of you. They are not insecurities, and I'm not jealous. But you have no idea how embarrassing it is to have your wife earning more and being more successful than you. I've been the butt of jokes for so long. Who is making fun of you, Shane? Who? My friends, the ones I meet up with every other weekend. Wow. So instead of dropping your unsupportive friends, you decided to sabotage your loving and supportive wife. You know what? I can't keep doing this anymore. Here, I'm divorcing you. You can't leave me. I only made one mistake, and I apologize for it. This one mistake of yours nearly cost me my career and reputation, and you didn't sound apologetic at all. You were just justifying your actions without even apologizing. You clearly still don't see anything wrong with what you did. Besides, you showed me where your priorities lie, and I'm not even a priority. I'm someone that you have to be better than. I don't think that's a healthy relationship, and I want nothing to do with you. You think this is over? I will ruin you for leaving me. Give it your best shot. I could not believe how dense Shane was. He really did not see why he was wrong and believed what he did was one small mistake. I grabbed my things again and made my way over to Wendy's house, but not before telling Shane he had a week to leave my home. I didn't care where he went, but he needed to be out. Of course, people at work figured that something was seriously wrong between Shane and me, so before the rumors started spreading, I decided to inform everyone that we were getting a divorce. I never told him the reason, but Shane decided that he wanted to ruin my reputation, so he began spewing lies about my morals. He told everyone that I had barred him from entering my party because I didn't want him to steal my spotlight and that I was selfish and jealous. I did not actually plan on ruining Shane's career, but after what he did, I decided to go ahead and show everyone proof of what he planned to do. I emailed our bosses and HR the documents he planned to show everyone along with signed statements from those he hired to help him carry out his plan. I also informed them about the lies that Shane was spreading within the office, leading to lesser productivity on my part and the office in general. It didn't take long for our bosses to decide what was happening. The next working day, Shane was called into the boss's office and was fired. Nothing was funnier than watching him exit the office with his head down. I had an inkling that he lost his job, but I didn't know for certain. My confirmation came when Shane called me shortly after he left to yell at me. "What did you do? What do you mean? Don't try and act as if you don't know what I'm talking about. I know that you're the reason I lost my job. You lost your job. Do not try and act innocent. Well, I'm not confirming or denying anything to you, but you have to admit that there would have been a conflict of interest if you continued to work with us. How dare you? I only attempted to ruin your career. I didn't actually do it. You didn't have to ruin mine. If I remember correctly, didn't you threaten to ruin me for leaving you? I couldn't take my chances, so I protected myself. So you did get me terminated? Well, not only were you a bad employee, but you were also actively harassing and planning the downfall of your colleague and wife. That violates all kinds of work ethics and does not represent the values of the company. Don't throw me all that nonsense. Well, let's just say that I was so upset with you trying to sabotage me that I got you fired. Maybe your tiny brain would be able to understand that. But why? I did nothing wrong. Right, but you could have. Nothing stopped you when we were happily married. So what would you have done when we got divorced? Wouldn't you have tried to do much worse things? I just approached HR with my concerns, and when they had to make a decision between me and you, it wasn't really a hard one. You've ruined my life. I will make you pay for it. I'll take you to court and make your pockets bleed dry. Yeah, and I'm sure that the jury would love to see the evidence of you trying to sabotage my career because you were jealous. That's enough now. I'm tired of listening to you. Goodbye, and do not contact me unless it's through your lawyer if you're contesting the divorce. I was glad that I was able to get the exact reaction I wanted out of Shane. That would teach him not to mess with anyone. Besides, I was not kidding when I said that his career in the company was dying anyway. I was just glad that I was the reason he got thrown out. Shane did try to contest the divorce and get me to pay him alimony because he reasoned that I was the reason he lost his job. Well, I had both evidence of him trying to sabotage my job and statements from my bosses, colleagues, and his mother stating the same. Let's just say the jury definitely did not see the point in his argument. The divorce trials went on for a long time. After it was ruled that I would not be paying him any alimony, Shane wanted to divide everything we owned, down to our spoons and forks. I tried my best to level with him, but he was not having it. I didn't see why he was drawing it out so much, considering he was losing a lot of money himself. I was actually doing pretty great. Finally, I decided to settle and give everything that he wanted. Within reason, of course. I still got to keep our house considering it was my name on the deed and title. But for every other thing he wanted, including our bed, I gave it to him. I had more than enough money to afford new things anyway. By the time our divorce was finalized, Shane was pretty much destitute. He was couch surfing at multiple friends' places who eventually all grew tired of him when he stopped searching for jobs. Wendy refused to help him out, so he cussed her out until she had enough and blocked him everywhere. Eventually, when he realized he had nowhere to go, he came crying to me and begged me for help. I refused to help him out because I did not want to be entangled with any of his shenanigans ever again. Last I heard, he's crashing at his aunt's place and finally found a job somewhere. As for me, I'm living a really good and comfortable life right now. Sure, I still feel pains of sadness at what I lost with Shane, but I keep reminding myself that I wouldn't have such a good life if I still had Shane with me. I've been getting therapy to deal with my grief, loss, and anger, and I can happily say that things are going well. Wendy, of course, took it upon herself to make up for her son's actions, but once I had a proper talk with her, she stopped doing that. Now she's become one of my closest friends and a mother figure to me. It'll be a long while before I trust a man again. But until then, I get to spoil myself and enjoy the best life that I can. Hey there, my name's Sophia. I'm 29 years old, and I recently gave birth to a child. However, that birth didn't happen without my mother-in-law nearly killing me. I know I sound crazy, but let me explain. Let me start by telling you a little more about my husband, Adrian. We met in college and started dating almost immediately. It was love at first sight, and I knew he was my forever. We had an amazing connection. Nobody understood me the way he did. After we graduated, we moved in together. While I had no complaints about Adrian, I did have several issues with his mother, Becky. Adrian and his family moved to my state from Missouri when he was 12, and they all have endearing Southern accents and different behaviors. I initially excused Becky's horrible treatment of me by attributing it to cultural differences. Becky hated me from the start, mainly because I had taken her precious son away, and also because the rest of Adrian's family adored me. I hadn't done anything special. I just listened to them and remembered what they said for our next meeting. They felt I genuinely cared about them, which I did, boosting my reputation. Becky couldn't stand it and constantly made snide remarks at my expense, belittling all my achievements. When people started defending me, she began doing it in a way only I heard. Adrian quickly stopped this by always being by my side. After about 7 years of dating, Adrian and I decided to tie the knot. We had a small, intimate ceremony, and it was the happiest day of my life. Becky did try to cause trouble, but we quickly shut her down by telling her to behave or be thrown out. After we married, my bond with Adrian's family only grew stronger. Whenever his relatives visited, they stayed with us instead of in hotels, which infuriated Becky. She tried to sabotage me, but no one cared or they stood by my side. It got to the point where Adrian's relatives refused to interact with Becky without us being present. It turned out Becky was horrible to not only me but to her family as well, which was why they preferred spending time with us. 3 years into our marriage, I started experiencing strange abdominal pains. At first, I brushed them off, but they happened randomly, and something told me to get them checked out. It turned out I was 4 months pregnant, which was a huge shock because I didn't look pregnant at all. The weight I gained, I had attributed to the holidays. I was excited to tell Adrian, so I made a fancy dinner and brought out a good bottle of wine. "Welcome home, sweetie," I greeted him. "Whoa, what's going on here? What's with the fancy dinner?" he asked. "Why don't you sit down first? I have some news to share with you." "Okay, should I be worried?" "Absolutely not. In fact, I think you're going to be really happy." "All right, I'm excited." "Spill." "So, you know how I've been having weird pains in my stomach?" "Uh-huh." "Well, I went to the doctor today, and she ran a few tests. It turns out my stomach is completely normal." "Oh, what was it then?" "Turns out, I'm pregnant." "What? Oh my gosh, are you serious?" "The best part is that I'm 4 months along." "What? How is that even possible?" "It's called a hidden pregnancy, and I haven't had any other symptoms. I had relatively short periods, but I didn't think that was abnormal. The pains I was feeling were just kicks." Oh my God, this is big news. I'm so happy. Me too, and this couldn't be happening at a better time. We're finally doing well financially, and I was going to ask you if we could start trying. Anyway, we're going to have to tell everyone about this. I'm worried about how your mother will react. What do you mean? You know how much she hates me. She hates that everyone loves me. I'm worried that with the pregnancy announcement, I'll get even more attention and she'll hate me even more. If you're okay with it, I'll have a strong word with her about her behavior. You don't have to worry about a thing. The only thing you have to do is enjoy being treated like a princess. I would like that talk and the princess treatment. I say we wait until we find out the baby's gender before we have a celebration, though. I love that idea. Now, let's have a little celebration of our own. Adrian and I were over the moon about my pregnancy. We hadn't made any concrete plans, but we had set aside some savings for when we eventually wanted to have kids. We waited another month before telling our families the good news. My family was overjoyed, and so was Adrian's, well, except Becky. Surprisingly, she barely reacted except for scowling at us. We decided to have a gender reveal party at our house. Planning a backyard barbecue and inviting both our families, we chose the traditional cake-cutting method and discovered we were having a boy. I was so happy and eager to start decorating the nursery. At the party, I was treated like a queen, with everyone giving me attention and asking questions. I felt on top of the world. At some point, though, I noticed Becky wasn't around. After asking around, I found out she was inside the house. I went in to find her at the top of the stairs. Becky, what are you doing here? The party's downstairs. Oh, I'm just trying to find proof. Proof of what? Of your lies. Excuse me? What lies? Come on now. Nobody believes you're really pregnant. You're too tiny to be 7 months along. Every woman experiences pregnancy differently. Just because I'm not as big as you expect doesn't mean I'm not pregnant. Don't lie. You just want everyone's attention. Why would I fake a whole pregnancy just to get attention? And why would I want attention in the first place? I know you're kind. You're jealous that my son pays me attention when I come over, and you want to take that away. Becky, I think you're projecting your feelings onto me, and I don't appreciate it. I have no need for attention because I naturally get it. You're trying to steal from me, and I do not appreciate that. Look, you're stressing me out, and that's not good for the baby. I'm just going to go. Stop trying to steal the spotlight. No one gives a darn about you. What are you? The last thing I remember was her pushing me down the stairs. I felt excruciating pain before passing out. When I came to, I was in a hospital bed with a tube running into my hand and pain in my abdomen. I had no idea what had happened. But thankfully, Adrian was sitting right beside me, asleep in his chair. I coughed a little, waking him up immediately. He looked shocked and relieved to see me awake. Sophia, you're awake. Thank God. What? What happened? You fell down some stairs. Are you sure? Yeah, I have some really bad news, and I need you to be as calm as you can. Oh no, how's my baby? Don't tell me something happened to my precious child. Sophia, sweetie, calm down, please. You lost a lot of blood, and we're struggling to find a suitable donor. But what about my baby? I need to know if my baby is okay. Because of how much blood you were losing, they had to induce labor. You gave birth, but how's the baby? I need to see him. He's in the NICU. He's in good hands. You have nothing to worry about. There's nothing more you can do. Don't blame yourself for anything. Once we get a donor for you, we can focus on our child, okay? Yeah, but I'm not blaming myself. Good. I have someone else to blame. What do you mean? I'll let you know, but could you please bring your mother down here? Why? Just please don't ask questions. I'm going through enough. Bring her here and tell her everything that happened in front of me. I'll explain everything else after. Okay, but first let's get you your blood, and then we'll do everything else you wanted. Yeah, okay. Adrian went to talk to my doctor, and thankfully they found a donor who was willing to donate immediately. The stress of everything made me fall right back asleep after the blood transfusion. I had so many emotions swirling through me, and I didn't know what to make of them. On one hand, I was grateful that my son was still alive, but I also knew he might grow up with some developmental issues. I didn't have a problem with that, but knowing Becky was the reason my son struggled made me feel hot with anger. I was asleep for a good 3 hours, and when I woke up, I felt much better. Once again, Adrian was next to me and immediately rushed to my side when I woke up. Hi, sweetie. You fell asleep for a little while. How do you feel right now? A lot better. How's our son? They've managed to stabilize him. He'll have to be in the NICU for the next 2 months. Will I be able to hold him? Not yet, but soon, I promise. Until then, we will definitely get to see him. I saw him, and he looks adorable. All right, I'm glad that everything's okay. But you wanted to see my mom, right? Oh yeah. Is she here? She's waiting outside. Shall I bring her in? Yeah. Adrian brought his mother into the room. Hi, Sophia. How are you? Becky asked, her tone dripping with insincerity. Not doing so good. Adrian, did you update her on what happened? No, he didn't tell me anything. He just asked me to rush here, Becky replied. Adrian, could you tell her what happened since I got here? Well, Mom, after you came running to us about Sophia slipping down the stairs, she ended up bleeding a lot. She had to be induced so she could give birth to the baby. Thankfully, the doctors and nurses managed to stabilize our son. He's just going to be in the NICU for a while now. Oh, you gave birth, Pearl. Congratulations, Becky said, feigning delight. Don't even. Do you have something to say to me and Adrian? What are you talking about? Sweetie, you said Becky came running to you after I slipped, right? Yes, and I'm so grateful that she saw it because none of us heard you fall. Great. Now, Becky, should I be the one to tell him, or will you do it yourself? What is she talking about, Mom? Adrian asked, his voice full of suspicion. Oh, I don't know. She just gave birth. She's probably just making things up. She's probably suffering from mommy brain. Lord knows I had a bad case of it after I gave birth to you. Do not even try to make this into something as arbitrary as that. Adrian, your mother pushed me down the stairs. What? You remember how I went to check on Becky after she had been gone inside the house for a really long time? Yeah. Turns out she was in the house for so long because she wanted to find proof of me faking my pregnancy. Why on earth would you be faking your pregnancy? Apparently, she thought I was stealing her spotlight. I didn't say that. Those were literally the last words you told me before you pushed me down the stairs. Mom, is this true? Fine, I will admit that I was a little jealous of her, but you have to believe me when I say that I didn't think she was actually pregnant. So you willingly endangered the life of my wife and my child because you didn't think something was true. Oh, come on, honey, she didn't even look that pregnant. How was I supposed to know? You can't just push people down the stairs. What if Sophia had hit her head hard enough to cause permanent damage? What would you have done then, huh? I don't know. I'm so sorry. You know what? I don't want you here. I will talk to you after I figure out what is going on in my mind. Becky tried to stay longer, but Adrian was having none of it. All I felt when I looked at her was blinding rage. How could she do something like that to me and my baby? How could she even try to justify her actions? Adrian had Becky escorted out of our room and barred her from visiting me or the baby. He wouldn't stop apologizing for his mother afterward, but I told him he had no reason to apologize. He did nothing wrong, and in fact, did the right thing by cutting her out for now. It took a few days, and then I was discharged. Over the next 2 months, I received a lot of calls from family checking in on me and making sure the baby and I were okay. Adrian and I also spent a lot of time going back and forth to the hospital just to see that our son was doing well. It was a very stressful time. But thankfully, our families were very supportive and helpful in every way. Becky also tried to reach out to us, but we didn't care to respond. We wanted nothing to do with her, and we made that clear. She did not take it lightly, so we had to block her. Finally, after 2 months in the NICU, we were able to take our son home. I cried really hard when I finally got to hold my son, and so did Adrian. Just the thought that we almost lost him made me want to throw up. Word got around that we had brought our son home, and somehow, Becky found out too. She got herself another phone number just to be able to communicate with us. When she saw that we weren't answering those texts either, she decided the best thing to do was to come to our house unannounced. Thankfully, Adrian opened the door. If I had opened it, Lord knows I would have chewed her out and possibly even hurt her for the stress she put my family under. Becky looked haggard and older than when we last saw her. She had tears in her eyes as she begged Adrian to talk to her. Please talk to me. Mom, you need to stop trying to contact us. How can I not? My son won't talk to me, and I don't get to see my grandson. You think you get to see our son? You don't think we're in pain from not being able to hold our little boy? I really am sorry. Please at least talk to me. I thought I was doing something right. How is pushing my wife down a flight of stairs the right thing to do? She's always been trying to steal everyone's attention. I see the way she tries so hard, and it's just so darn hard to keep my anger in check. You have no idea how insane you sound right now. I do not. I was trying to do what was best for you. Best for me? How is this best for me? I always knew you could do so much better than Sophia. I was just trying to get you to see that. By almost killing my child and wife. Are you kidding me right now? What you did was not for me, but because you couldn't handle the fact that there was someone better than you in your family. Sophia is not better than me. Oh, she is in every way. She cooks better food and has a much better temperament than you. Why do you think more of our family has started coming over to our place for Thanksgiving when we host? Nobody can stand you and your entitlement. You take that back right this second. That is no way to speak to your mother. Now I will speak to you the way you deserve to be spoken to. You made our lives a nightmare from the start, and I have been silent about it only because Sophia begged me not to damage my relationship with you. Okay, I get it. I'm a horrible mother. You are. You absolutely are. You're lucky that we're not going to the police about you hurting Sophia and our son. Oh, please, like you have evidence of it. It'll be my word against hers. Who said we didn't have evidence? Don't try and bluff me right now. Look, Sophia and I are exhausted, and we want this time to be as calm as possible. So for the foreseeable future, I do not want to hear from or see you again. Do you get it? You can't do that. I want to see my grandson too. Oh, you are never seeing your grandson. What? You have no idea how much our son is going to suffer thanks to your jealousy. The least I could do is make sure that he never meets the source of his problem. I will fight for my grandparents' rights. Go for it. Bye. Adrian was mad that Becky still had the audacity to show up. If I were in her place, I would never have shown my face to my family. But hey, everyone's different, I guess. Becky did not give up on trying to contact us. Not only would she call and text us a whole bunch of times, but she would also show up at our doorstep and make a huge ruckus until we opened the door. So Adrian and I did the only sensible thing and got a restraining order against Becky. She once again did not like that, but I was so tired by this point that I really did not care. Thankfully, Adrian and I dealt with Becky just in time for us to take our son home. Let me tell you, holding him for the first time made me sob and feel so grateful that he was still alive. Adrian and I decided to use the next few months to just bond with our child. So we didn't let anyone come over to see the baby. Thankfully, after everything that happened, everyone was happy to comply. Becky, however, did not stop trying to bother us. One day, we actually received a summons to come to court because Becky was trying to fight for her grandparents' rights. That threw me into a blind rage. I couldn't believe that she was actually trying to claim grandparent rights when she almost killed me and the grandson she so desperately wanted to see. I asked Adrian to grab the evidence and we made our way to a lawyer's firm. We hired a good lawyer, showed him the evidence, and he told us that we could charge Becky even though we didn't want to do it earlier. After dealing with her harassment for months, we decided to press charges against her. The trial that followed was truly something out of a movie. Becky cried and sobbed at first, claiming we were neglecting her and not letting her visit her only grandson. I could tell that the jury was a little sympathetic towards her, but I knew I had the most incriminating piece of evidence for her. When the footage of her pushing me down the stairs played, everyone in the room went silent and Becky grew pale. After the first hearing, Becky blasted us with calls and texts accusing us of hiding the truth from her. We figured it was in the best interest to block her. After a couple of weeks, Becky was charged with attempted murder of an unborn child and was sentenced to 6 months in jail. All her appeals were denied, and Adrian and I couldn't have been happier. Of course, word got around in Adrian's family as well about what Becky had done, and let's just say that nobody wants anything to do with her anymore. She's going to have a tough time when she's done with her sentence. As for Adrian and me, we're gradually getting used to being first-time parents and loving every second of it. I'm just glad we get to do it stress-free. We are considering moving, but that's a decision to make for a later time. Thank you so much for listening. I lost my mother to illness when I was in elementary school. My father worked hard to raise me, and I loved him dearly for his gentle nature. When I married my husband Ethan, my father shed tears and said, "Please take good care of Lily." My only concern was Ethan's parents. Both my father-in-law and mother-in-law graduated from prestigious private universities. They were true elites. My father-in-law had established his own company when he was young and made a fortune in one generation. However, not long after we married, the company went bankrupt because my mother-in-law, who was registered as an executive, spent too much of the company's money. Desperate, my in-laws suggested moving in together. "Clearly, we're going to have children, and we can't afford to support you," Ethan argued. Listening to my husband's words, I sighed with relief. Unless there was a need for caregiving, I wanted to avoid living with my in-laws. It seemed my husband felt the same. Then my father-in-law yelled, "Are you repaying the kindness of raising you with ingratitude?" My mother-in-law began to cry. "This is what happens when you marry a woman from a poor family. You've become rotten to the core." The conversation got nowhere. It was really impossible to live together, but maybe we could send some money. My husband suggested this, and although I glared at him, paying money meant we wouldn't have to live together. I chose the option that would lighten my mental burden, persuaded by my husband. However, this was the beginning of our troubles. The agreement was to provide $300 a month, but they kept asking for additional money every month, saying we can't pay for medical bills and medicine. Or my back hurts, so I need to go to a chiropractor. I doubted whether this was true, but I didn't feel like checking. If we refused, they might bring up living together again. I grappled with frustration but endured the constant begging for money. Our finances were barely making ends meet every month. That's why I started working part-time at a bar, leaving my young son Noah at the child care center. The bar paid well, and they let me take home leftover food. Somehow, we managed to stabilize our finances. When Noah turned 10, my husband was ordered to transfer by his company. Since the transfer was to a rural area, Noah and I considered moving with him. But my husband said, "It's better to be near your father," thinking of my father who lived alone. My father's house was about 20 minutes away by train, while the transfer location required the use of a bullet train. I decided to rely on my husband's words. While I worked at the bar, my father would take care of Noah. He seemed happy to spend time with his grandson. I would take home food from the bar, and my father, Noah, and I would gather around the dining table. Noah, who never warmed up to his paternal grandparents, was unreservedly affectionate with my father. My humble, grandson-loving father was the complete opposite of my in-laws. They would brazenly claim to be my parents, eat and drink as they pleased at the bar where I worked, and leave without paying. I ended up covering all their bills. Although they didn't come often, when they did, it was usually to show off to friends or juniors. Even though it was only once or twice a month, it still hurt to pay for them out of my part-time earnings. The manager often sent something and gave me substantial discounts, saying, "You're always working hard." I sometimes fantasized about splashing beer on them, imagining how satisfying that would feel. In the fall of Noah's junior year in high school, as he was preparing for university entrance exams, I received a call from my husband. "I can come home in the spring." "Really?" "Yeah, and with a promotion to boot. I really put you through a lot. Let's live happily together again, the three of us." Next spring was looking busy. As soon as I hung up, the electronic sound of an incoming call rang out. Thinking it was my husband, I answered without looking. "What?" I inadvertently let out a careless, deflated voice. "Hello, this is the city hospital," the caller explained in a tense voice. My father had collapsed and was taken to the hospital. He had stopped to buy Noah's favorite pudding at a convenience store and fainted in front of the cashier. I grabbed only my wallet and phone and rushed to the hospital. Although I couldn't get many details, I was told my father was in emergency surgery. "Dad," I called out to him, praying, "Please make it, please." When I arrived at the hospital, I gave the reception staff my father's name. "I heard he's in surgery now." I pressed the staff at the front desk, drenched in sweat. "Please head to the 4th floor." I was directed to the operating room. The surgery wasn't over yet, so I sat on the bench, praying and waiting. Several hours later, the doctor informed me the surgery was done. The diagnosis was a stroke. There would be a slight impairment in speech and motor functions, but I was nothing but grateful that his life was spared. Dad's condition gradually stabilized. During my free time, I visited the hospital, talking to Dad and even giving his immobile hand a massage. Dad, today Noah. I made sure to tell Dad all about Noah. His initial response was weak, but daily rehab was fruitful, and Dad started to show signs of recovery. One day, while massaging his hand as usual, Dad weakly grasped my hand. It was the first response since the surgery, and I was so happy that I cried. Dad, you did great. Then Dad slowly shook his head and pointed at me with a hand he could move. Thank you, he stuttered, smiling. He should have had difficulty moving his facial muscles, yet he smiled at me. Stroke aside, Dad seemed to have aged, becoming smaller. I recalled my father at my wedding, firmly shaking hands with my husband and saying, "Take good care of Lily." His strong, dependable hand had now become frail. Though it was my turn to protect him, I firmly grasped my thin father's hand, encouraging myself. I had to leave the hospital before evening because I had a part-time job at the bar. I hoped Dad continued to recover as I started my shift, full of hope. My in-laws were the first to enter when the shop opened. Lily dear, they called cheerfully, bringing along two men a bit older than themselves. I didn't care how they were related and didn't want to know. Following the restaurant's protocol, I led them to their seats. As soon as you sit, order as much as you like, said my father-in-law. Don't worry about the bill, added my mother-in-law, as if they wouldn't just push it onto me again. I focused on serving them, hiding my annoyance. I had just received good news about Dad, after all. The peaceful events at the hospital were ruined by the in-laws in front of me. They knew no bounds, ordering beer, soju, and sake one after another. The table was a mess with spilled drinks and food scraps. The two men they brought seemed drunk and started harassing me. Hey, wife, bring the beer quickly. What a shame, our daughter-in-law here, really such an incapable wife. My in-laws began to loudly criticize me on purpose. I tried to hold back since I was at work, but my heart couldn't contain it. Excuse me, customers, there are others here. Can you please quiet down a bit? I attempted a desperate counterattack, hoping that by speaking loudly enough for other customers to hear, it would embarrass my in-laws. It's just a party, who cares? That's what they mean by you can tell where someone's from. Look, your plate's open, ma'am. Fueled by alcohol, their remarks escalated. It seemed she was raised so carelessly because she has no mother. I was so entangled by my mother-in-law's words that I couldn't respond. I was already holding back at the edge of my limits from having my son Noah insulted, but now they were even mentioning my late mother. I've always wanted to splash beer on them, imagining defeating my in-laws like this had become part of my daily routine. That day, I was virtually pouring a bottle of flat beer over their heads in my imagination, of course. In January, Noah was accepted into his first-choice private university. On the day of the acceptance announcement, my husband also called with the happy news that he could come home the day before Noah's graduation ceremony. We would both be attending Noah's graduation. The night of the graduation, we had planned to celebrate Noah's success and my husband's promotion at the bar where I worked, but that meant we couldn't avoid inviting my in-laws. My father was still in the hospital, so he couldn't come, but ignoring my in-laws would cause problems later. I prayed they would be busy, but if they knew we were treating them, they would definitely come. They were such despicable people. When I called to invite them, sure enough, both agreed to come. Noah's new private university is known nationwide as a prestigious institution, and my father-in-law pompously said, he inherited my genes. Well, see you on that day. I quickly ended the call. The night of Noah's graduation, I happily walked to the restaurant with my husband and Noah, the three of us together after a long time. The in-laws had already arrived by taxi. The restaurant manager had kindly prepared a private room for our celebration. Just thinking about my in-laws made my stomach ache, but I decided to smile as much as possible in front of the family and entered the restaurant. We took our seats and toasted with bottled beer for the adults and juice for Noah. Noah, congratulations, my husband smiled warmly at him. Congratulations on your promotion, I said to my husband, raising my glass. I'm really looking forward to college in the spring, Noah exclaimed. Here, this is from Grandpa. I handed Noah a cherry-colored envelope. Grandpa, of course, referred to my father. From Grandpa? Noah joyfully accepted the envelope. It's not much, but he said to enjoy college life. Grandpa prepared this celebration gift with a nurse's help. Even though his hands still aren't moving properly, I explained. Just knowing my father's feelings was enough. I had informed my in-laws over the phone that my father had a stroke and was hospitalized. They were out playing and responded only with a casual, "Oh really?" Watching them, it suddenly hit me how indifferent they were. Speaking of which, it's really tough, huh? A stroke, my father-in-law said nonchalantly. I was used to it by now, so I brushed it off. Yes, it is, but the progress is good. My father-in-law didn't seem to like my indifferent attitude and mocked my Colette's father. It's a brain disease, right? His head's gone crazy, hasn't it? Noah's brow furrowed as he looked at his grandfather. Quick to counter, my husband spoke up. Is that any way to talk? But it's the truth, isn't it? Yes, it's a brain disease, right? The in-laws were not at all shaken by their son's argument. The boastful in-laws couldn't help but enjoy the misfortune of others. Just stop it, my husband began to say, but I held up my hand to his face. Then I splashed the lukewarm beer that was left in the glass right onto my father-in-law. The flat beer left in the bottle was poured over my mother-in-law. I could endure them speaking ill of me if it didn't reach Noah's ears. But I couldn't stand to hear them say that my father, who had raised me with all his might, was crazy. My father's hand had become so small. It was up to me to protect that hand. I glared at my in-laws. Don't mock my father. The in-laws were at a loss for words, having beer suddenly thrown on them. It was just a joke. Come on, father-in-law retorted in a low voice. My husband then countered, Dad, Mom. They slowly looked up at their son's voice. There's a reason why I invited you here today. My husband pulled out a single note from his wallet. He placed it where the in-laws could see it, like a slap in the face. On it was a detailed list of the in-laws' extravagant spending, a bus tour with friends, luxury spa treatments, purchasing designer bags, and much more. You can find out about this stuff easily, he said. The in-laws no longer tried to make eye contact. Everything my husband had found seemed to be true. If you can afford to live so luxuriously, you don't need our support anymore. I quickly followed up, cutting off my father's indecisive words. You don't need it, right? But just the allowance, mother-in-law pleaded. No, we won't send any more money. We're cutting ties too, my husband stated firmly. Please go home. My disheveled and soaked in-laws looked at me with stunned expressions. Please leave, I repeated, pointing to the exit. Under the pressure of my firm stance, my in-laws slithered out as if crawling on the floor. It seemed my husband knew everything. He knew the torment I was going through. Apparently, Noah would sometimes stop by the bar to say thanks for the meals, but embarrassed to be seen by me, he waited until I wasn't there. At that time, the manager had been reporting to Noah how I was being treated by my in-laws. It's hard to tell a child this, but please protect your mom, he was told. Noah had discussed this with my husband. My husband had declared that when he returned, he would sever ties and stop all financial support. However, he had asserted that it would only be carried out once he was back, since he couldn't protect Noah or me when he was away. And so my husband stopped the payments as promised. Every day, my in-laws called, probably to demand the money before cutting ties completely. I unleashed everything I wanted to say to my in-laws. There was nothing to fear since I was ending this relationship. After ending the call unilaterally, I blocked my in-laws' contact. A few days later, my in-laws seemed to have asked my part-time jobs manager to help them get in touch with me. They did this multiple times during business hours. The manager, annoyed, lost his temper. Don't ever come back to our store, he yelled, throwing an empty beer bottle and chasing them out. In the conversation between my in-laws at that time, I heard words like payments and monthly installments, so it seems they were likely taking cash advances or making installment payments, unable to lower their standard of living. Serve them right. I'm now working at the second bar opened by the manager. He made arrangements to ensure that my in-laws couldn't harm me if they came to the store. My father will be discharged from the hospital soon, and it's decided that we'll live together in this house. My husband and Noah both fully agreed. As I cleaned the room that will be dedicated to my father, I thought back to his small hands. That day, I must have been utterly exhausted. After putting my daughter Nia to bed in her crib, I headed to my bedroom and fell asleep instantly. A few hours later, I was abruptly woken by Nicholas crying in the night. Still half asleep, I checked the time on my phone. 1:00 a.m. Good thing I got a little nap earlier, I thought, dragging my tired body up, planning to go to the living room to soothe Nia. Just then, I heard a shouting voice, "Shut up! Be quiet!" For a moment, I couldn't tell where the voice was coming from. I thought maybe my mother-in-law Jamie was yelling from her room, so I said, "Yes, I'm coming to soothe her now," and opened the living room door. There, right in front of me, was Jamie, standing over the crib, glaring at Nia. The next moment, she slapped Nia's face, shouting, "Enough already." "What are you doing?" I yelled louder than I ever had before. Jamie looked surprised for a second, then yelled back, "Why didn't you soothe her sooner? This child is so noisy." Panicking, I rushed over to the crib and lifted Nia to protect her from Jamie. I couldn't believe it, hitting a baby. My name is Candice, a 28-year-old housewife. I used to be an office worker, but I'm currently on maternity leave, focusing on housework and childcare. My husband Miles and I started living with Jamie, my mother-in-law, about a year ago. Miles's job is demanding, and he's rarely home. He was worried about leaving me alone while I was pregnant and felt sorry for Jamie being alone since my father-in-law Willis passed away 2 years ago. So we decided to move in with her. At first, living together went well, but gradually Jamie started showing her true colors, and honestly, I was having a hard time. "Candy, you're really slow at housework, aren't you? Can't you make better food?" Jamie harassed me every chance she got. When Willis was still alive, I didn't have any issues when visiting my in-laws' house, so I didn't particularly dislike Jamie back then. However, after Willis passed away and we started living together, Jamie became an unbearably selfish and rude presence in my life. "Hurry up with the housework. You're really useless, you know. Slow and ugly." Jamie kept insulting me like this. The last part was just mean and had nothing to do with housework. Since I was pregnant, it was natural for me to be slow with chores. But Jamie didn't seem to care. She just seemed desperate to harass me. As for Miles, he's mostly away on business trips and doesn't get home until midnight, even when he's not traveling, so I have to spend most of my days with Jamie. I kept hoping that things would change since the baby was born. Even Jamie, rough as she is, would surely become kinder and gentler living with her grandchild. I was desperately holding on to that hope. I did consult Miles about it on WhatsApp, keeping it to a level that wouldn't trouble his work, and he replied with, "I'm really sorry. I wish I could be there for you during tough times." He also takes care to admonish Jamie when they meet. Knowing that Miles is on my side gives me a little relief. That's why I could bear being scolded by Jamie for not doing the housework well enough while pregnant. Later, I safely gave birth to a healthy baby girl. Miles, blessed him, managed to get permission from his company, saying the baby is being born, and left work early, rushing to the hospital just before I gave birth. When he held our newborn daughter, he looked so happy and said, "She's really cute, like an angel." I was happy too, having given birth to the child of the man I love. I reported the birth of our healthy baby girl to Jamie through WhatsApp. Since we lived together, I thought she might come to visit us in the hospital, but Jamie didn't show up. She didn't even reply on WhatsApp. Could it be that she's not interested in her granddaughter? I started to feel a cold sweat. Will this harassment continue even now? As I was dreading that thought, the door to my hospital room opened. "Candice, how are you feeling?" "Wow, what a cute baby. It's a girl, right? She's going to be beautiful." It was my sister-in-law, Leela, who came to visit. Leela is very kind and cheerful, and she's always been good to me. I've always loved Leela. She's already married and has children, so I had decided to consult her about parenting. "What's her name?" "Miles and I decided to name her Nia." "Oh, that's a nice name. Wait, hasn't Mom come?" "No, I did contact her, but she ignored the read receipt." "Oh, I see. She's really a pain sometimes, isn't she? Unpredictable and lacking common sense." "Well, yeah. Leela is straightforward, and I've always appreciated that about her. She once told me, if you ever have a problem living with Mom, feel free to vent to me. That really saved me, so I used to honestly complain to Leela when things got really tough. Leela understood Jamie's difficult nature, so she knew that if she scolded Jamie based on what I told her, Jamie would end up taking it out on me. That's why she wouldn't admonish Jamie unless it was really necessary. At that time, just being able to vent was enough to relieve my stress. I had no idea things would get harder after Nia was born. When I got discharged from the hospital and returned home with Nia, Jamie didn't mention her at all. "Hurry up and clean," she said. I couldn't believe it. It was as if she completely ignored Nia's existence, Despite feeling upset, I put Nia in her crib and started cleaning. About 5 minutes later, Jamie started yelling, "Candy, come here." "Yes, what is it?" "That baby is noisy. Do something about her crying." "I'm sorry." Again, I couldn't believe it, referring to her as that baby as if she's a nuisance and telling me to do something about her crying. Jamie continued to treat Nia poorly. "The baby is crying. It stinks. Change her diaper now. The crib is in the way. Shut up, baby." Jamie shouted these things each time, and Nia would cry louder in fright, which made Jamie even angrier. It was a very uncomfortable atmosphere for Nia and me. "Jamie, her name is Nia. Can you please call her by her name?" "Shut up. Don't tell me what to do. You're her mother, so it's your job to take care of her. Make sure I'm comfortable." "Look, she's crying again." Nicola had started crying because Jamie yelled. I had just put her to bed. I had to stop my chores and go soothe Nicola, and if that delayed the housework, Jamie would get mad about that too. When I put Nicola back to bed and resumed my chores, Jamie said, "This is really in the way, takes up so much space," and kicked the crib. The crib shook, and Nicola woke up crying again. "What are you doing, Jamie?" "Shut up. It's your fault for putting such a big thing here." "But it was you who told us to put the bed in the living room because it's noisy when she cries at night in our room." "Are you complaining to me now? Stop arguing and soothe that noisy child." "That noisy child? This person is really the worst." I had no choice but to do my chores while holding Nicola. Trying to balance housework and childcare without angering Jamie was really tough, and I was gradually getting exhausted. If I focused too much on childcare, I'd be scolded for being slow at housework. If I focused on chores, I'd be berated for parenting. Miles was away on a business trip for about 2 months and wasn't home. I couldn't bear it and tried consulting him over WhatsApp and phone, but he seemed busy and couldn't talk long. He'd apologized many times saying, "I'm really sorry for the hard times," but I felt guilty making him apologize when he was working so hard for our family. Then something unbelievable happened. That day, maybe because I was so tired, I fell asleep as soon as I put Nicola in her crib and went to my bedroom. A few hours must have passed when I suddenly woke up to Nicola crying in the night. Still half asleep, I checked the time on my mobile phone. 1:00 a.m. Good thing I got a little nap earlier, I thought, dragging my tired body up, planning to go to the living room to soothe Nicola. Just then, I heard a shouting voice, "Shut up! Be quiet!" For a moment, I couldn't tell where the voice was coming from. I thought maybe Jamie was yelling from her room, so I said, "Yes, I'm coming to soothe her now," and opened the living room door. There, right in front of me, was Jamie standing over the crib, glaring at Nicola. The next moment, she slapped Nicola's face, shouting, "Enough already." "What are you doing?" I yelled louder than I ever had before. Jamie looked surprised for a second, then yelled back, "Why didn't you soothe her sooner? She's so noisy, this child." Panicking, I rushed over to the crib and lifted Nicola to protect her from Jamie. I couldn't believe it, hitting a baby. Could this person really be human, hitting a 3-month-old baby? Nicola was crying louder than I had ever heard before, and her face had turned red. I immediately called an ambulance. At the hospital, the doctor examined Nicola. He said her face was red, but there was no worry about bruises or injuries, which relieved me. I almost collapsed on the spot. "What happened? Did you drop her on the floor or something?" the doctor asked. I explained the situation to the doctor. Right then, Leela entered the room. "Candy, is Nicola okay?" "Oh, Leela." In my panic, I had called her. While in the ambulance, I called Leela despite it being the middle of the night since Miles was on a business trip and couldn't come immediately. Leela explained to the doctor about Jamie hitting Nicola. The doctor was speechless and Leela was shaking with anger. The next day, I went home with Leela. I let her enter the house alone to confront Jamie. Jamie acted as if nothing had happened, harassing me as usual. "You're late. Hurry up and make breakfast. You missed taking out the trash because you came home in the morning. You really can't do housework. Enough already. Did you forget what happened yesterday? You hit a 3-month-old baby, remember? How can you act so normally? First, apologize for yesterday." Jamie's face turned red with anger. "What? Why should I apologize? That child was the noisy one. I just slapped her because she wouldn't listen. It's a part of discipline. I thought she wouldn't be quiet otherwise." That's not discipline. It's just violence. Enough, so noisy. Just do your chores already. Jamie, you don't regret it at all, do you? You don't even think you did anything wrong. Leela, please come in. Leela entered the living room as I called her. Why is Leela here? Mom, what are you doing? I can't believe you did such a thing. No, Jamie was flustered by Leela's arrival. Mom, you do realize that what you did is legally punishable, right? Jamie's face turned pale. Leela, you're not going to sue your own mother, are you? The one who's going to sue is Candice. I'll just be her lawyer. But wait, it was just a part of her education. Who would agree that hitting a baby is education? This is a case of assault. No matter how much Jamie tried to justify her actions, they could never be excused. I'll definitely sue you. Be prepared, I told Jamie. Jamie began to cry quietly. I'm sorry, Candy. I always lose control when I get angry and end up regretting it later. I've always been depressed and regretful about how I treated you and Nia. I truly am sorry for what happened. Why did I raise my hand to her? I always wanted a boy for the eldest grandson. It was also Willis's wish. Willis's wish? It might be an old-fashioned thought, but we always hoped for a boy to carry on the family line. When a girl was born instead, I was happy about the birth of a granddaughter, but also felt like I failed to fulfill a promise to Willis. Every time I got angry, I couldn't control myself. I'm really sorry. Jamie continued speaking through her tears. Please, Candy, change me. I'll do anything. Jamie said this and then deeply apologized. Jamie, please calm down. Let's talk properly first. No, I've done something terrible. No amount of apologies will ever be enough. Jamie kept apologizing repeatedly. I felt my heart wavering and almost forgave her. That's when Leela spoke up. Don't take her seriously, Candy. Mom always pretends to be deeply remorseful like this when she's cornered just to end criticism against her. She did the same when Dad found out about her affair. He forgave her because he fell for her act, but her tears dried up immediately afterward. This is probably just an act too, right? You can't fool me. Leela's observation made Jamie falter. What are you saying, Leela? Looking closely, Jamie's tears, which were flowing heavily just a moment ago, had already dried up. It was likely fake crying. Jamie, I can't forgive you anymore. How twisted can you be to try to weasel out of what you've done? Wait a minute, I'm not trying to escape anything. Okay, I understand. But we've already decided to take legal action. As I said that, Jamie's face turned red with anger. Don't joke with me. Why should I be subjected to this by a daughter-in-law like you? How insolent. Just then, the sound of the house key turning was heard. Candy, is Nicola safe? Miles asked. Miles, why are you here? I thought he couldn't come since he was on a business trip. I had only contacted him on WhatsApp. I called him several times in the middle of the night, then he drove straight here. Miles had been driving since 3:00 a.m. and arrived this morning. I didn't know Miles was coming too. Mom, cut it out. I've been hearing about your harassment from Candy, and I've been warning you every time, haven't I? And now you've gone and hit my precious Nicola. I'll never forgive you for this. Miles, even you're blaming me? How cruel, after I raised you and Leela. What are you talking about? You always left us with Aunt to play around. Our memories are filled with the meals Aunt cooked, not you. Mom, just give it up. Besides, I think the doctor already reported it yesterday. The hospital knows you hit her, so I think it's just a matter of time before the police come. No, wait. You're okay with your mother being arrested? I'd rather not have someone who hits a 3-month-old baby around. No matter what you say, Mom, you have no one on your side now. Jamie finally seemed to understand her situation. Pale-faced and slumped, she waited. Soon, the police arrived and Jamie was arrested. As a first-time offender, she received a suspended sentence, but Miles and Leela cut ties with her and issued restraining orders. Miles moved out of the in-laws' house with me and Nicola and rented an apartment while looking for a place. We stayed briefly with Leela, which was a great help. Candy, I'm really sorry for everything. I'll take parental leave. If I can't get it, I'll change apartments or even jobs to ensure your and Nicola's safety. I was so happy to hear Miles say that. His company had some issues with the working environment and he couldn't get parental leave, so he resigned and found another job. Now he comes home on time, helps with Nicola and the housework. We live in a high-rise near Leela's family, often gathering for meals or enjoying barbecues. I don't know what's become of Jamie, but I heard from neighbors that after her arrest, she's become completely isolated and doesn't go out anymore. Prideful Jamie probably can't bear being known as someone who did such terrible things. Well, it doesn't matter to me anymore. She doesn't know where we moved, so there's no chance of meeting or her showing up unexpectedly. I plan to live happily, supporting each other as a family with Miles, Nicola, and Leela's family. Nice to meet you. The woman who entered the room suddenly greeted me. If I marry this woman, my father's debts will be wiped out, I thought. However, she had a scar on her face, and more importantly, there was my father to consider. Are you really okay with this? When I asked, she fell silent for a while. My name is Chris Baker, 45 years old. I was an only child raised by my father who ran a small-town factory and my timid mother. My dad had a strong streak of independence from a young age and started a metalworking factory in his mid-20s. However, the business never did well, and my parents quarreled almost every night. By the time I entered junior high, I realized their business was on the brink of collapse. It was clear that it would be better to give up. Still, my dad never lost hope and always smiled in front of me. I lived a poor life because of my dad, but seeing him work, I couldn't truly resent him. Eventually, I started helping out in the factory. It turned out that I really was my dad's son. I had a natural talent for precision work. I wanted to work in the same field, but who knew how long the factory would last? With those mixed feelings, I studied at a technical high school and helped at the factory when I got home. I led a life far removed from club activities or romance. In my senior year of high school, I planned to take over my dad's factory. However, my dad strongly opposed this and said, "It's not that easy." He also insisted, "At least get some experience at other companies first." I thought it would be the same since it was the same industry, but he wouldn't budge no matter how much I tried to persuade him. While I thought it was my lack of ability back then, maybe he just didn't want me to go through the same struggles. After a fight with my dad, I left home. I got a job at a steel plant in a neighboring state, working hard every day. My dad's unique way of doing things had rubbed off on me, and I often got scolded by my experienced colleagues. Meanwhile, my dad kept running his business on the edge. He never gave up his old-fashioned quality over quantity mindset and ran the business without thinking about profit. There was even talk of a merger once because of his skills, but he turned that down, saying it would lower the quality. I was so exasperated by his stubbornness that I couldn't say anything. Even so, I had no time to worry about my family. Work consumed me daily, and romance or marriage were far from my mind. My 20s and 30s flew by, and I suddenly found myself in my 40s. Just when I thought I had finally become a full-fledged adult, my parents started to weaken. My dad suddenly collapsed one hot August and passed away in the hospital the following winter. A strain from his hard work must have caught up with him. If he had been checked earlier, there might have been a chance for recovery. My mom blamed herself for not forcing him to go to the hospital. But even if she did, he probably wouldn't have gone no matter what. It was such a sudden farewell that I couldn't even cry. Nevertheless, when I saw the rusty factory at home for the first time in decades, I couldn't stop crying. I would never see my dad standing there again. In the end, I had always been watching his back. I finally realized that after turning 40. Anyway, the factory had to be closed. I wanted to take over and rebuild it, but it wasn't realistic. Just when I decided to carry on my dad's spirit in my own way and move forward out of nowhere, my life took an unexpected turn. It all started with my dad's debt. We discovered that he had racked up several $1,000s of debt, which even my mom didn't realize. The money was borrowed from a factory owner he had known for years, Mr. Adams. Mr. Adams used to play with me a few times when I was a kid. He and my dad frequently visited each other's factories and had quite a close relationship. Mr. Adams switched to mass production early on and quickly flourished. Now his factory is one of the most prominent in town. About a month after my dad's funeral, Mr. Adams called me over. It was surely about the debt. I thought if I paid it back little by little, I might be able to clear it while I'm still alive. Although I didn't know how to apologize, I headed to see him. However, what I heard there was shocking. "We'll take over your father's factory and clear the debt," Mr. Adams declared. I thought it was a joke, but he continued, "In return, I'd like you to marry my daughter." I thought I was dreaming, but he was dead serious. Mr. Adams has only one daughter. She was 32 and single at the time, working in his company's office. She had never been married and had no children. He simply said, "I want her to settle down soon. If I marry her, the debt will be gone. Besides, though our factory will be absorbed, the machinery and skills will be preserved. However, if I refuse the marriage, it all goes away." I was bewildered and bombarded him with questions. "Well, I don't have much experience with relationships," I stammered. I blurted it out before I could even feel embarrassed. "Neither does my daughter." "Just meet her once," he calmly said. That night, I was invited to Mr. Adams' house, waiting in a room for his daughter to arrive. When the door opened, I gasped. She had a large burn scar on her face, with the skin color differing on each side, making it clear that something had happened. I understood why Mr. Adams wanted me to marry her to clear the debt. It was probably hard for her to find marriage prospects because of the scar. What hurt me the most was that she accepted such a terrible arrangement. "My name is Lisa Adams. Nice to meet you." Lisa greeted me politely. She didn't seem to have any intention of opposing her father's wishes. When I couldn't say anything out of confusion, she said, "I've heard the situation from my father. If you're okay with it, I don't mind." She spoke matter-of-factly. She got the scar as a child when she snuck into the factory to play and got burned. From my perspective, the arrangement seemed beneficial. The debt would be cleared, the factory would remain, and I would get married. However, there was no benefit for Lisa. We stared at each other in silence for a while. All I could think about was my dad, who had left me with an impossible situation. Even if I wanted to hate him, I couldn't. Maybe that was the only thing Lisa and I had in common. "Are you really okay with this?" I asked, looking into her eyes. The silence continued, and soon tears welled up in her eyes. Eventually, she started crying like a child and murmured, "I can't accept this." She had been just forcing herself to accept it. "Then let's call this off," I suggested. "I can handle the debt and the factory on my own. I can't drag her into this," I said to myself. However, Lisa stopped me, wiping her tears. "No, I have to do something," she insisted, showing concern for me. I thought harder than I ever had in my life and then came to a conclusion. "Lisa, I have an idea if it's okay with you." I shared my idea with her, and she nodded slightly. I told Mr. Adams, "I would like to marry your daughter, but could we have a bit of a courtship period? We've only just met." That was my answer, and he accepted. I quit my previous job at the steel plant and joined Mr. Adams' company. I also moved into his house as Lisa's fiancé. That meant the debt was, of course, cleared, and our factory was absorbed. I began modifying the techniques my dad had protected for mass production. I worked tirelessly every day. Mr. Adams let me work freely as long as I could make a profit. I continued to study my dad's notes, experimenting and learning. I came to realize how delicate and brilliant my dad's techniques were despite how pathetic he had seemed. When I came home, Lisa would be there waiting with dinner. Sometimes we'd share meals with Mr. Adams and his family, enjoying warm conversations. "I can't wait for the wedding," Mr. Adams would say with a smile, and Lisa and I would smile back. "Are you still up?" Lisa would ask in our shared bedroom. "It's for both of us," I'd reply, continuing my work. "Thank you," she'd whisper. Closing her eyes on my desk, there'd be my work clothes that she had ironed for me. Seeing them always reminded me of my dad and mom. Time flew by, and 3 years passed quickly. One night, we had a rare family dinner with Mr. Adams present. To Chris's incredible achievements, cheers. In those 3 years, I proposed a new production line using my dad's techniques that brought significant profits to the company. If things continued as planned, the debt my dad left would be easily surpassed. "Now I can trust Lisa to you even more. Isn't it about time for the wedding?" Mr. Adams said cheerfully. How wonderful it would be if things could continue like that. However, everything I had done was leading up to that moment. "Mr. Adams, we're not getting married," I said, looking him straight in the eye. Next to me, Lisa had the same look, but her hands were trembling. I felt the same. We had both been lying for the past 3 years. What I had proposed to her at that first meeting was to lie to Mr. Adams about getting married and delay the marriage during the courtship period. During that time, I would make enough profit to cover the debt and carry on my dad's techniques. Once that was achieved, I planned to tell Mr. Adams everything. It was the only way to achieve my goal and give Lisa the freedom to marry whomever she wanted. In those 3 years, I honestly hadn't laid a finger on her. We lived together because of his watchful eyes, but our engagement was just an act. Both of us kept a respectful distance. As expected, Mr. Adams was stunned. Instead of the angry outburst I anticipated, he apologized to her. "I'm sorry for what I've done," he said. Lisa had never defied her father before. Seeing the determined look on her face, he seemed to reflect on his own behavior. He allowed us not to marry. Moreover, he said I could stay at the company or even go independent if I wished. Mr. Adams apologized to her for imposing his ideas on her. "I'm truly sorry. From now on, live freely." Seeing her father apologizing, Lisa started crying. Now she could decide her life on her own terms. Afterward, I decided to stay at the company and continue working as I had. Yet I couldn't stay with the Adams family anymore. That was my last night with Lisa. We kept our usual distance. "Thank you so much." Lisa thanked me politely, just like the first time we met. That time, her expression was bright and relieved. "At first, I thought your proposal was impossible, but you really accomplished everything," she continued. "It's thanks to you, Lisa, but it's not all done yet," I said, facing her and closing the distance a bit. She looked surprised and tensed up. I was determined to fulfill my true final goal. Back then, I hadn't seriously thought about that. However, over the 3 years, that had become my sole desire. "Lisa, will you marry me?" Over those 3 years, I had come to realize her beauty and kindness. Her scar didn't matter at all. I was just supported by her inner strength. When she gained the freedom to choose marriage, I would propose to her. That had become my true goal. She stared at me wide-eyed. Of course, she had the right and the courage to refuse. Nevertheless, I wanted her to choose now that she was free. "If marrying me is really what you want, I'd be happy," I said. When I said that, she nodded. That time, she closed the distance between us a bit. Seeing her tears, my eyes filled up as well. As the unstoppable tears flowed, I remembered my dad with nothing but gratitude. A year later, we got married. I still remember the shocked look on Mr. Adams' face when we told him about our marriage. I still continue working for him now. My dad's techniques are at the forefront of the industry. He's probably smiling shyly in the afterlife. "Are you still up?" Lisa whispered next to me. "I still want to work," I started to say, then added, "Well, let's go to bed," and took her hand. I never thought I'd have a family. Maybe this is the version of me my dad always wanted to see. "Brian, could you consider marrying Carol again?" "Are you serious?" The hospital director, Larry, with a pale face, proposed the idea of remarriage to me. Beside him stood his trembling eldest daughter, Carol, who had a secret she couldn't tell anyone. "My name is Brian Coleman. I work as a doctor at a privately run hospital. 5 years ago, I married my wife, Sarah, and we were living happily until she passed away 3 years ago in a car accident. Sarah was also a doctor, and because she wanted to focus on her career, we didn't have any children. Brian, I need to talk to you." One day, the hospital director, Larry, approached me in the hospital. Thinking it was about work, I went to his office. "Hi, Brian," he greeted me, and there was Carol, Sarah's older sister. Carol is 3 years older than Sarah. She is not a doctor but works in administration and has always seemed quiet and a bit shy. The sisters were very close, and Sarah often referred to her as her beloved sister and looked up to her. Carol had a fiancé who was supposed to take over the hospital one day. Since Sarah's passing, I hadn't had the chance to ask how she was doing, but I heard she was going to get married soon. Carol, who was waiting for me in the director's office, looked pale. Although she looked at me, she said nothing. "Brian, I'm sorry for calling you so suddenly. I have something important to discuss with you today." Something important. When I was asked to have a seat on the sofa in the office, I sat across from Larry and Carol, who both had troubled looks on their faces. "Yes, I know it's outrageous to ask this of you, but Brian, could you consider marrying Carol again? Are you serious?" I couldn't believe the unexpected words from Larry. "Carol? Wait, Carol is Sarah's." "Yes, Sarah's biological sister," Larry confirmed. When I instinctively looked at Carol, she was still pale and trembling slightly. Something felt off about her demeanor and Larry's urgent tone. Thinking that, I swallowed hard and tried to calm my confused thoughts. "Is there some kind of situation?" I gently asked. Larry stared at me. Even though Sarah had passed away, I still considered Larry, her father, as my father-in-law. He had treated me like his own son ever since I started dating Sarah. He even said that if Carol's fiancé wasn't in the picture, he would want me to take over the hospital. If there's something going on, please tell me. Sarah is no longer here, but I still think of you as my important family. Brian, thank you. Hearing my words, Larry took off his glasses and pressed his eyes. As you know, this hospital has been passed down from my father, and we've managed to keep it running for generations. It's not a big hospital, but for the sake of the locals who have relied on us for years, I feel we must continue running it. Yes, that's true, I agreed. However, I don't have a son, so to keep the hospital running, I need a son-in-law, Larry continued. Bringing in an outsider or letting a relative take over is an option, but they only see this hospital as a money-making box. He then looked at Carol with a caring expression. Carol has gone through a lot as the eldest daughter, he muttered, then looked at me to change the subject. Carol says she doesn't want to get married. Doesn't want to get married? Yet you want me to marry Carol? But she has a fiancé, right? You're right, but the fiancé is not trustworthy. He's been pretending all this time, Larry said, clenching his fists in anger. I can't let that man marry Carol, so I broke off the engagement. But in the future, more men like him will approach Carol to inherit this hospital. As I said earlier, their goal is the hospital and the money. That's why, even if it's just for show, I want you to marry Carol. Larry's disappointment and frustration towards those who approached for money and his hope for Carol's happiness were palpable from his clenched fists. I understand the situation, but why me? I was Carol's sister, namely Sarah's, husband. Larry looked at me calmly. From both of our perspectives, you are the only man we can trust in this world. I am the only one. I glanced at Carol, who was looking down but nodded slightly. You are the only one, Brian. As a doctor, you understand the importance of a hospital for patients and have considered the future of this hospital with me. That's why I want you to marry Carol and inherit this hospital. I see. These unexpected words left me speechless. I always felt Larry treated me like his own son, but I didn't realize he trusted me that much. I want Carol to be happy. Please, can you help her? He pleaded. Next to him, Carol also trembled as she did the same. Even though I had lost my wife, I had once decided to live as part of her family. Above all, they were her beloved ones. All right, I will help. I nodded to Larry and Carol. So Carol, let's take care of each other from now on. Yes, thank you very much. Even though it was just a formality, we registered our marriage and moved into a house prepared by Larry, considering the eyes of those around us. However, we had separate bedrooms to respect each other's privacy. Carol, let's feel relaxed as if we were a real couple because this is our house. Is that okay? Of course, she agreed, though Carol was Sarah's sister and not a stranger. There were no romantic feelings between us. It was a marriage in name only. But there was something on my mind. Carol, shall we talk about Sarah tonight? Yes, she replied. After dinner, while drinking hot milk in the living room, I spoke to Carol. She was sitting across from me, looking down. Since our marriage was decided, there had been a slight awkwardness. I could sense her tension around me. We had already begun living together, and I wanted us to at least get along like friends. As I mentioned earlier, since losing Sarah, I've talked to friends who knew her and shared memories. But friends aren't family. You and your family cherish Sarah the most, I said. Carol listened intently to my words. So tonight, let's talk about Sarah over drinks. I'd love to hear stories about her childhood from you. You really cherished Sarah, didn't you? She asked. Of course. Sarah was my comrade, my best friend, and my beloved wife. When I answered confidently, Carol smiled gently. It was the first smile I had seen from her in a while. Sarah was so lucky. What? Sarah was so lucky to be cherished like that, she repeated, smiling again. But this time it looked a bit lonely. After that, we had a few drinks, calling it a housewarming party, and talked. Carol, usually quiet, spoke happily about Sarah. She showed how much she cared for Sarah, which made me happy. Brian, thank you. What makes you say that? For accepting my father's proposal to marry me, she said. With the alcohol taking effect, Carol became a bit more open. So again, thank you. You were Sarah's husband, but you agreed to marry me. It's okay, Carol. Like I told your father, you're an important family to me. Then I started to talk about my own family. My parents had a bad relationship and divorced when I was still young. After that, I was raised by my father, but he was the kind of person who never really thought of me as his son, selfish and inconsiderate. That's why from high school on, I studied and worked hard, got a scholarship, and went to college. During my college years, I spent all my time studying and working part-time jobs. I didn't have a moment to go out. After enduring all those hardships, I met Sarah at the hospital and was treated like a son by Larry. That's when I learned the warmth of family. That's why I care about you too. It's nice to hear, Carol said with relief. Then she slowly stood up and moved to stand beside me. Carol, I have something I need to tell you. Something to tell me? Her sudden serious tone made my heart race nervously. Nodding, Carol slowly raised her left arm and rolled up the sleeve of her jacket. Oh my, this? Seeing the scars there, I was so shocked I nearly fell over. They were vivid, raw scars. I couldn't tell anyone that my fiancé was abusing me both verbally and physically. As the daughter of the hospital, I felt I couldn't let go of someone who would be a big plus for the hospital because of my personal feelings, Carol revealed. Carol's former fiancé was the second son of a major hospital. He was also a doctor, and marrying him would secure the future of Carol's hospital. After Sarah passed away, he brought up the topic of marriage. Until then, he had been kind and amiable. But suddenly, I had a thought. Is he really the right one? So I told him we should postpone the wedding. That's when he changed completely. Carol hugged herself tightly. From then on, he verbally abused and threatened me every day. He wanted to control me completely. Sometimes he even got violent. I can't believe it, I said, shocked. I endured and endured, but I couldn't talk to anyone about it, and I lost myself. These scars are from that time when I felt utterly hopeless. Her former fiancé had changed after Sarah's death. Since I hadn't seen her during that period, I had no idea she was going through that. When I thought I couldn't take it anymore, my parents visited me at my place. They later told me they just felt an urgent need to see me. Seeing their faces, I finally broke down and told them everything. She recalled those days, and tears welled up in her eyes, her voice trembling. Knowing the situation, my father was furious and broke off the engagement. We received some compensation from him. But that's not the end of it, is it? I muttered, struggling to contain my anger. She looked at me with shaking eyes. Realizing I was frowning at the thought of her pain, I quickly came to my senses. Oh, sorry. What's wrong? Nothing. Then she smiled, looking relieved. That's why I thought you were the right choice. Since what happened with him, I lost trust in people, especially men. I was scared just having them close. It's understandable. Even hearing the story made it clear how horrifically Carol had been treated by her ex-fiancé. My father was worried about me, so he suggested the remarriage to you. He knew you were Sarah's husband and knew you were a kind, gentle, and wise person. Her face clouded with a look of guilt. But I'm sorry for dragging you into my selfishness and causing you trouble. It's not trouble at all. Really? Sure. Besides, this isn't selfish, Carol. You tried to move forward again. I stood up slowly and gently extended my right hand to her. You haven't given up on trusting people or overcoming your fear of men. So I'll do everything I can to help because you're an important family to me. Brian, hearing my words, she bit her lip hard. Tears streamed down her cheeks and wet her trembling lips. Can I hold your hand? Yes. I gently touched Carol's hand. She flinched for a moment, but as I slowly and gently held her hand, the trembling gradually subsided. It's all right, Carol. I'm not like that jerk. When I deliberately said it firmly, her eyes widened and she looked at me. Once she smiled, she exhaled deeply and seemed to feel relieved. Yeah, he never touched me gently like this. He seemed kind on the surface, but he was nothing like you. She took another deep breath and exhaled. Seeing her savor the moment, I felt an overwhelming joy, and tears welled up in my eyes. Carol, let's slowly start regaining the real you. Don't worry. I'll be with you. When I said this with a serious look, she stared at me and nodded slowly. I'm glad it's you who's here with me. She squeezed my hand tightly in return. From that day on, we started living together as a couple. Having built a relationship of trust, we often talked about Sarah. Those were peaceful, happy times. I think it was Sarah who guided me to avoid marrying my ex-fiancé and for my parents to come to help me. You think so? Yes. If I had married him, my life would have been a disaster by now. And I think it was Sarah who made it possible for me to live with you. Indeed, if it weren't for Sarah, I wouldn't have remarried Carol. Because of Sarah, I experienced the warmth of her family and learned the warmth of having a home. We owe Sarah so much. For sure. We looked at each other and laughed, squeezing each other's hands tightly. A few years later, Carol and I truly became a married couple. When our child was born, Larry shed tears of joy. Lucas, be kind to your sister Sophia, okay? Okay, Mom. Come on, Sophia. Let's go. Okay, Lucas. Now, I live happily with my beloved wife Carol and our adorable son and daughter. My name is Harper, and I'm a 42-year-old housewife working part-time. My husband, Keith, is 48 and works for a company. We have an 18-year-old daughter, Sophia, who is a high school student. Though Keith and I have been married for nearly 20 years, there has been a persistent tension in our home for quite some time. When Sophia was little, the three of us used to spend a lot of time together. However, since she started high school, Keith has been going out by himself more frequently. He has completely stopped participating in Sophia's school events and club activities. I am the one who has to drive Sophia to her badminton tournaments and practice matches, which are often far away. No matter how much I ask Keith for help, he always brushes me off saying, "I'm busy with work." Looking after the child is the mother's job, isn't it? Sophia, too, is astonished by her father's behavior. Other kids' fathers enthusiastically support them, but our dad doesn't seem to care. Sophia isn't particularly fond of Keith, who never helps with child rearing or housework, but always has complaints. Even when my part-time job gets busy and I come home late, Keith never prepares dinner. Instead, he complains, "What time do you think it is? I'm starving here. I work too, you know. You could at least prepare dinner." This often leads to arguments. Lately, Sophia has been helping with dinner preparations, which has been a great relief. The initial reason I started working part-time was because Keith asked me to. I had planned to start working when Sophia grew up, but Keith's habit of buying unnecessary things pushed me to start working again when Sophia was 1. Keith loves cars and constantly buys new ones, even though he doesn't have a high income. He spends money without thinking, often paying for his coworkers when they go out drinking. He comes home drunk, boasting about treating everyone. Recently, there have been fewer drinking parties, so he's not treating others as much. But he still complains about not having enough money. Keith works for a company that doesn't pay well, and his spending habits make it hard to save. I wanted to save money for Sophia's education and to buy our own house, but now we are barely getting by. Most of my part-time income goes towards payments on the luxury car Keith bought, a large hybrid minivan, which is too big for our 3-person family. He decided to buy it without considering Sophia's or my opinion. Before this minivan, we had a gas-guzzling giant SUV. I got angry several times because of its poor fuel efficiency. Keith, who never goes to the mountains or the sea, bought it because it was trendy. He said, "Now it's okay even in heavy snow," even though we live in an area where it only snows about once every 5 years. When he bought the current minivan, he said, "This time it's a hybrid, so the fuel efficiency is good." Also, a lot of people can ride in a minivan. When Sophia was in junior high school, many of the parents of the badminton club members drove minivans. Sophia and I had a conversation about it. Indeed, a minivan can accommodate many people and even allow for changing clothes. It's nice, but our car is large and the interior is cramped. My husband, Keith, occasionally checks in on my conversations with our daughter, Sophia. Recently, he bought a sports car before the SUV. "It was a childhood dream of mine," he said. "It's every man's fantasy." I asked him, "Can't you wait until Sophia grows up? This car's child seat is a pain. It's a car I can only drive now." He responded, "We don't use the child seat every day, so it's okay." He might not mind since he won't be transporting Sophia, but it was hard for me. The 2-door car was difficult to use and the fuel economy was terrible. Sophia was still at an age where she needed a child seat, and getting in and out was a struggle. If only Keith would consult me. But he decides on his own, buying on impulse without considering the payments. I don't understand why he buys things he can't afford on his salary. In the end, I had to pay the loan with the money I earned from my part-time job. Every time my hours at the part-time job get longer, it's because of his purchases. When we bought the current minivan, Keith and I had a quarrel. "Next time we buy a car, consult us too. You can't decide on your own." he replied. I should be the one to decide. I'm the one who drives it the most. I said, you can decide, but at least let me know what kind of car it will be. That's all I ask. Okay, I understand. So next time, I can decide if I consult with you first. At his words, I started feeling anxious. You're not thinking of buying the next car already, are you? I asked. I don't know. I didn't say anything, did I? His answer seemed unnatural. I'm paying almost all of the loans for the car you're driving with my part-time job earnings. I can't pay any more than this. I'm also paying for the down payment, Keith retorted, looking dissatisfied. It's not a down payment. It's the money from trading in the old car. Then it's the same as what I paid. It could be, Keith conceded. About a month later, Keith brought up the topic again, looking guilty. Actually, I bought a new car. I was so stunned that I didn't even feel angry. This time it's an electric vehicle, so we don't need gasoline. With the current high gasoline prices, it's perfect. Electricity is expensive too. We don't have solar power, so are there any advantages to electric cars? It doesn't emit carbon dioxide, so it's good for the environment. I couldn't tell if he was just easily swayed by trends or simply doing what the car dealer told him. It's too much. How much did you pay for it? A loan of $750 per month. I need your part-time job earnings again. $750 a month? That's all of my part-time earnings. Do I have to work for your car? You'll be driving it too. Now that Sophia's club activities are over, I won't be using the car as much. Our daughter, a high school senior, has retired from her club activities and won't need the car anymore. I wanted to save my part-time earnings for her college education, but now my plan has been completely derailed. We need money for Sophia's college education too. Is it okay to buy such an expensive car? I asked Keith. He asked me back, are you okay? Sure enough, due to the recent incident, I started to harbor doubts about my husband. Am I really okay living with this man? I am filled with uncertainty. Keith doesn't consider Sophia's college expenses or our retirement funds at all. I want to discuss it with someone, but my parents are no longer around. I don't want to worry Sophia, so I can't talk to her. At that moment, I remembered a senior from work who got divorced a few years ago and is now single-handedly raising 2 children. Despite being my junior by a couple of years, they perform better than other employees. I'm not considering a divorce yet, but I want to consult him. The next day during lunch, I asked him to listen to my story. After hearing my situation, the senior said, I had small children and my wife didn't work, so I was able to make the decision quickly. I felt a bit better after talking, but honestly, I was still unsure. Do you think you could live with Sophia just on your part-time pay? He asked. That's impossible. I can't make ends meet unless I'm a full-time employee. I thought so. We both fell silent. However, as I confided in my senior, I felt much better after just consulting. From then on, we talked about various things, considering my future life. After a while, my husband's new car was delivered. The smell of a new car is really great, Keith said. Yeah. Why are you angry? Be happy, the new car is here. Good for you. You're no fun. Fine, I'll celebrate by myself, he said, starting to drink beer. You're taking it easy, aren't you? I retorted. Say whatever you like, he replied, unusually pleased, probably from the joy of the new car. The next day, I had to work overtime and came home late. Sophia had prepared dinner, which was a great help. When I came home, my husband was again happily drinking beer. You're working late. Good job. I felt irritated at my husband, who was meddling with me. I have to work hard for your new car, don't I? Feeling annoyed, I made a sarcastic remark. Thanks for earning the extra money. It gets so bothersome. Why don't you just stop the payments? I was angry that he'd say such a thing when I was working late, but I held back from complaining and decided to really stop the payments. The next day, I withdrew all the money from the account used for the car loan. This meant the next payment wouldn't go through. I was looking forward to seeing what kind of face my husband would make. I managed to withdraw the money in time before the next due date, and a reminder notice arrived the next month. I hid the letters so my husband wouldn't find them. Of course, the reminder came again the following month and the month after, but I was able to hide it successfully each time. Around the 4th month after stopping the payments, I received a different document. It was sent by certified mail, and I thought this was the final reminder. When my husband came home, I threw the packet with the document at him. Some important document arrived for you." In a panic, Keith unwrapped the package, shouting, "What the hell? You haven't been making car payments for 3 months." The letter stated that the car was to be repossessed due to repeated failure to respond to payment reminders. He would now have to give up his beloved car. "But you were the one who said to stop the payments." "Well, that was just something I said in the heat of the moment when I was drunk." "Who would really stop payments?" Keith exclaimed. "I was so annoyed because you would tell me thanks for earning some pocket money while I was working so hard." Becoming more defiant, he started to say even worse things. "You always complained every time I bought a car. I should be able to buy a car if I want to." "I didn't complain about you buying a car. You can buy one, but you should pay for it yourself," I retorted. Struck by my blow, Keith was at a loss for words. "We're going to need money for Sophia's education soon. Think about the future." I was shaking as he listened to me, and finally he snapped. "If you can't listen to me, get out. We're getting a divorce." Hearing the word divorce made even me falter. "Okay, I'll leave. Let's let Sophia decide what she wants to do." Before I finished speaking, Sophia emerged from her room. "I'm obviously going with Mom. It's too much trouble to stay with a father who doesn't do anything." She had heard our argument and seemed to understand what was happening. Sophia, who had already prepared her luggage, surprised me. "Well, I'll be leaving then. I'll come back for the rest of my stuff later." I grabbed only the essentials and left the house. "Hey, where are you going?" Keith's voice suddenly took on a sad tone. Turning back, I said, "We'll properly discuss the divorce process later. I don't mean alimony, but you have to pay child support." We left the house, leaving Keith with his tearful face. "Mom, you were so cool, just as expected. But what are we going to do now?" "Don't worry, I had prepared for this, thinking it might happen. I had expected this to happen ever since Keith told me to stop paying the car loan. Also, I had about $3,000 from not paying the car loan payments for 4 months. We stayed in a motel for about 3 days, but I had already arranged for an apartment. We were able to move to the apartment on the 4th day after leaving the house. I'm sorry for making you live in a place like a motel. I wouldn't want to live there forever, but it was actually fun because we already had a place to move to," Sophia said cheerfully, which relieved me a little. "It's going to be just the two of us from now on, but I'll do my best. I'll help with everything too. Let's do our best together." We had to go back to our old house to get the rest of our stuff. We also had to finalize the divorce. I contacted Keith before returning to the old house. I asked a lawyer who was recommended by a senior at work to accompany us because I was afraid that Keith might become violent if it was just Sophia and me. The lawyer was an expert in divorce cases and had helped the senior during his divorce. It was expensive, but we could afford it. When we arrived, even the appearance of a lawyer surprised Keith, who said, "You're really okay with getting a divorce? I won't forgive you if you come back and apologize later." He glared at me as he threatened me. "It's okay. I won't say such things. Even if you are working part-time, leave this place. You won't be able to make a living. You don't have to worry about me. Just sign the divorce papers quickly." "Fine, I'll sign it. Just shut up. I will take full child support considering your income." Looking at the child support calculation, Keith started shouting. "Why the hell do I have to pay child support? I won't pay a single penny to a daughter who wants to leave home." Being told this, I felt grateful for having a lawyer. The lawyer convinced Keith that child support is not paid to me but given to our daughter as a duty of a father. But there's still a chance that Keith won't pay the child support. Therefore, arrangements were made to deduct it from his salary if he doesn't pay. If you're just a part-timer, but you've got a lawyer, how prestigious. Where did you get that money? I forgot to tell you, I was made a full-time employee. I'm making about double my old salary, so don't worry. Keith seemed speechless. Honestly, becoming a full-time employee gave me the courage to finally get a divorce. And as a full-time employee, I could also get a housing allowance, so I could afford to rent an apartment. Due to advice from my senior colleague, I had been looking for an apartment I could move into immediately. The decision to bring a lawyer to the discussions was also advice from my senior. And sure enough, the child support from Keith stopped coming in almost immediately. It was good to have a lawyer come with me and set up the procedure to deduct it from his salary. Despite all the chaos, Sophie was able to get into her first choice university. I have to work even harder for her tuition. Working for a car loan that I don't even use is different. This has a sense of purpose. From now on, for Sophia's sake, I plan to live happily together.